For 6 years, King Draven Ashvale had sat upon the throne of Veremore, and for 6 years, his wolf had refused every woman brought before him. Nobles called it a curse. Advisors called it a crisis. Draven called it nothing at all, because he had stopped expecting an answer a long time ago. The choosing ceremonies had become a quiet embarrassment. Duchesses, warriors, and even a princess from the eastern shores had stood before him, hopeful and poised, waiting for the moment his wolf would rise and claim them. Each time, nothing happened. His wolf stayed silent, distant, as if waiting for someone who did not exist. Draven had begun to believe that perhaps he was destined to rule alone. A king without a mate was unusual among his people, but not impossible. Logothing. He told himself he had made peace with it. He told himself many things he no longer believed. Illyra had never wanted to be noticed. She worked in the lower halls of the castle, carrying trays, folding linens, keeping her eyes low and her voice quiet. She had come to Veremore 3 years ago, with nothing but a small bag and a past she never spoke of. The other maids liked her well enough, though they knew little about her. She kept to herself, worked hard, and disappeared into the background the moment her tasks were done. That was how she preferred it. Attention was dangerous. She had learned that lesson before she ever set foot in this castle, and she did not intend to forget it. The evening everything changed began ordinarily enough. Illyra was carrying a tray of wine glasses down the east corridor when a nobleman's hound came tearing around the corner, barking at nothing in particular. She startled, stepped back too quickly, and the tray tipped from her hands. Glass shattered against the stone floor, and wine spread in a dark red pool at her feet. She dropped to her knees immediately, gathering the shards with trembling hands, already rehearsing the apology she would need to give. That was when she heard footsteps stop just beside her. She looked up, and her breath caught. King Draven stood there, dressed simply for once, without his usual formal robes. He was not looking at the mess. He was looking at her, and something in his expression had gone very still. Illyra scrambled to her feet and bowed so quickly she nearly lost her balance again. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I did not mean to startle anyone. I will clean this at once." Draven did not respond right away. Inside him, something he had not felt in 6 years stirred to life. His wolf, always silent, always distant during these encounters, was suddenly and completely awake. It did not lunge forward the way instinct might expect. Instead, it went quiet in an entirely different way. Calm, certain. It knelt. Draven had never felt anything like it. His wolf, proud and untamed, bent low within him, as though bowing before someone far greater than a king. He stood frozen, staring at a maid he had never spoken to, whose name he did not even know, and felt his entire world tilt sideways. "Your Majesty?" Illyra asked again, uncertain why he had not moved or spoken. "It's nothing," Draven said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Clean this up. You're not in trouble." He turned and walked away before she could see how shaken he was. For the next several days, Draven told himself it meant nothing. A trick of exhaustion, perhaps, or a moment of confusion after a long ceremony season. His wolf did not agree. Every time Illyra passed within sight, even at a distance, he felt it stir, restless and attentive, as if trying to close the space between them. He avoided the lower halls. He buried himself in council meetings, trade disputes, and border reports, anything to keep his mind occupied. But at night, when the castle grew quiet, his wolf paced within him, unsettled, waiting. Illyra, for her part, noticed the change in the king's behavior, though she did not understand it. She saw him more often than usual, appearing in corridors he had no reason to walk through, present at moments that felt too coincidental to be accidental. She told herself it meant nothing. Kings did not concern themselves with maids. She kept her head down and her distance wide, as she always had. But avoiding him became harder as the weeks passed. One evening, a sudden storm rolled over Veremore, rain hammering against the castle windows. Illyra had been sent to close the shutters in the West Library, a task she usually enjoyed for its solitude. She was halfway through the room when she realized she was not alone. Draven stood near the fireplace, a book open in his hands that he did not seem to be reading. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I can come back," Illyra said quickly. Stay, Draven said, before he could stop himself. The storm will pass soon enough. She hesitated, then nodded, moving to close the shutters as thunder rolled outside. Draven watched her, unable to look away, his wolf calm for the first time in days, simply because she was near. You dropped this, he said suddenly, holding out a small ribbon she had lost days earlier near the kitchens. He had kept it without fully understanding why. Illyra stared at it, surprised. You didn't need to keep that, Your Majesty. I know, he said simply. She took it from him, their fingers briefly touching, and something passed between them that neither had words for. Illyra pulled her hand back quickly, unsettled by the warmth that lingered. Why do you keep finding reasons to be near me? She asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Draven considered lying. He considered deflecting, the way kings often did. Instead, he told her the truth. Because my wolf recognized you. That night in the corridor, when you dropped the tray, it knelt. It has never done that before, not once, in 6 years. Illyra went very still. That's not possible. I'm no one. I'm a maid. You are not no one, Draven said firmly. Not to me. She shook her head, stepping back toward the door. I can't be what you think I am, Your Majesty. I have a past I don't speak of. Closeness isn't something I want. It isn't safe. I'm not asking you to give me anything, Draven said gently. I'm only telling you the truth, because you deserve to know it. He did not follow her when she left the library that night, though every part of him wanted to. His wolf whimpered at the distance, but Draven forced himself to stay still. He had learned, in his years as king, that some things could not be commanded. They had to be earned. In the days that followed, Draven changed his approach. He stopped seeking her out directly. Instead, he made small, quiet gestures. He ensured her workload was lighter when she seemed tired. He left a warm cloak outside her door during the coldest nights, never claiming credit for it, though she always knew. He never once mentioned the bond again, never pressured her, never demanded an explanation for her fear. Illyra noticed all of it. She told herself she should remain distant, that a king's attention was a dangerous thing to accept. But slowly, despite her caution, something in her began to soften. She saw a man who ruled a kingdom, yet chose patience over power when it came to her. She saw loneliness behind his crown, a weight he carried without complaint. One quiet afternoon, as she folded linens near an open window, she finally allowed herself to speak of the past she had hidden for so long. She told him of the village she had fled, of people who had once seen her as nothing more than a burden, of the fear that had followed her since. Draven listened without interrupting, without judgment, his wolf calm and steady beside her unspoken pain. You are safe here, he said finally. Whatever you decide about us, you are safe. For the first time since arriving at Veremore, Illyra believed someone completely. But safety, as it turned out, would soon be tested. Word had spread through the court that the king's wolf had chosen a servant over the noblewomen who had spent years vying for his attention. Lord Halveth, a nobleman with ambitions of tying his family to the throne through marriage, saw Illyra as an obstacle standing between his daughter and the crown. He was not a man who accepted obstacles easily. One evening, as Illyra walked alone toward the servants' quarters, she was stopped by 2 men she did not recognize, sent under Halveth's orders to frighten her into leaving the castle for good. They cornered her in a narrow passage, their intentions clear in their cold expressions. Illyra's heart pounded, old fears rising fast and sharp. But before either man could act, a low growl echoed through the corridor, and Draven appeared, his wolf's presence radiating from him with a fury the court had never witnessed. He did not need to explain himself. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, told the men everything they needed to know. They fled before he took a single step further. Draven turned to Illyra immediately, his anger giving way to concern. Are you hurt? She shook her head, though her hands trembled. Without thinking, she stepped into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady as her fear slowly eased. I won't let anyone touch you, he said quietly, not while I still draw breath. Word of the attack spread quickly, and with it, the truth of what had almost happened. The court could no longer pretend the bond between their king and the quiet maid was some passing rumor. It was real, undeniable, and now, dangerous to ignore. The next morning, Draven called his court together. Nobles gathered, whispering among themselves, waiting to see how their king would address the scandal that had unfolded. Draven did not hesitate. "My wolf knelt for her," he said, his voice carrying through the hall without wavering. "Not for a noble woman, not for a princess, but for a woman with a kind heart and quiet strength that none of you bothered to see. I will not apologize for what my wolf chose freely, and I will not allow anyone in this court to threaten her again." Lord Halveth opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Draven's eyes silenced him instantly. Elira stood at the edge of the hall, overwhelmed by the weight of every eye turning toward her. For a moment, the old fear rose again, urging her to run, to hide, to disappear the way she always had. But she thought of Draven's patience, his gentleness, the safety she had finally begun to trust. She stepped forward instead. "I did not ask for this," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I did not seek a crown or a king, but I have seen who he truly is, not through power, but through kindness. And I choose to stand beside him, not because he is a king, but because he is a good man." A hush fell over the hall, followed by a murmur of surprise, then something unexpected, quiet approval. The castle staff, who had always cared for Elira without hesitation, smiled openly, proud of the woman they had come to love. Draven crossed the hall and took her hand, his wolf finally still, finally at peace. In the weeks that followed, Elira was formally presented as the king's chosen mate. The transition was not without difficulty. She had to learn the customs of court life, and the court had to learn to accept her. But Draven stood beside her through every step, never once letting her feel alone. One evening, as the sun set over Vermore, they stood together on the palace balcony, overlooking the kingdom bathed in gold and orange light. Draven's wolf, restless for 6 long years, remained calm within him, content simply to be near her. "I spent years wondering if I would ever find what I was looking for," Draven said softly. "I never imagined it would be you." Elira smiled, leaning into him without hesitation, without fear. "I spent years believing I didn't deserve to be found at all." "You were always worth finding," he said. "My wolf knew it before I did." Below them, the kingdom carried on, unaware of how deeply its future had shifted the night. A quiet maid dropped a tray of wine glasses and changed the heart of a king forever. And as the stars rose over Vermore, the Alpha King finally understood that some of the greatest bonds were never found in titles or crowns, but in the quiet, steady courage of someone who had simply learned to be seen.